Hi everybody, welcome to Tidalwave Studio. My name is Damiani and today I would like to show you my approach to editing drums. Okay, drum editing. Who doesn't like a really tight drum performance? Especially if you think about having like synths and loops playing on top of the drums, so then you really need them tight. If there is an organic band playing around, maybe you don't need to really stick to the grid as long as it feels nice. Sometimes you really need it tight, and I'm going to show you how I do this. Let's first listen to a little section of the drums that I have here, and then we see what needs to be done. That's not too bad. If we would listen without the metronome playing along, this would feel really nice. But it is not completely tightly on the grid. So if you want it really tight, we need to go in and edit it. One thing that both manual and automatic editing have in common is that you should always treat all those microphones as one instrument. Never try and move only one microphone. For example, just the bass drum. Oh, this hit is a little bit too early. I'm going to move it instead of moving all the tracks at once. Sometimes I get tracks to mix and somebody did this kind of editing, just move the snare without moving all the tracks. Problem is that the alignment between the direct microphone and the overheads and the rooms and all the other microphones who pick up everything, they don't match anymore, so we really need to cut everything at once. Okay, the first thing we are going to do is group all the drums. So I select them all, group them so that when I make a cut, I can move everything at once. Great. So far, so good. But now let's look at one little thing. As you can see, these different microphones, if you look at this bass drum hit, for example, they don't arrive at every microphone at the same time, which is perfectly normal. Sound needs some time to travel, so the far room microphone obviously is going to hear an instrument later than the microphone that is stuck right up the instrument. So this is the little runtime difference that we have here. If you now just go in and move this, you will never have all the edits right before the hit, which would be optimal. Best would be to really have like the fades and the edits shortly before the actual hits and not like a kilometer in front of the room mics just because they are delayed. So what I like to do is align all these tracks just temporarily for the time of editing and then moving them back where they belong to when I'm done editing. This makes editing so much easier and more straightforward, and you don't have to move around the fades just to accommodate for the room tracks to be later than the individual tracks. So that's what we're going to do. I usually orient my measuring and my movement on a snare hit. So let's go in, zoom in on this snare track, and now I just measure the distance between the individual track and let's say now here for the far room tracks. I measure it's like 1552 samples. So what I do is I take a note that I will move this by 1552 samples. To the left, I select the room track and move it to the left. So now it aligns with the direct snare hit. And I'm going to do this for every other track, for the closed rooms, for the overheads, and for the hi-hat track. This is far better than it was before, right? So now when we are grouping our tracks, and if I make a cut, the cut is on the same spot for every track. So now if I move around and make a crossfade, everything matches fine. Okay, now let's see how we are going to edit this. What you really need is a grid to show you where your hits even are and where to move them. So in this case, I have it set to 16th notes, which will be fine. There is no hit that is really quicker than a 16th note. So this is the grid I am going to work with. Then if we do it manually, we just go in, have a look, which hits need to be moved, move them and make nice crossfades so that you don't hear that anything has been cut. So this hit is still fine. This one is a little bit too late, a little bit too late, a little bit too late. So I'm going to select these. Then I'm going to separate that part of the audio region. In Pro Tools is Command E. In your DAW it may be something different. Now I take the whole thing, move it to the grid, and then I make a little crossfade before that cut so that there is a smooth transition from one part into another. Never not do any crossfades, because if you leave out the crossfades, you will have a little click there, because just waveforms just meet randomly somewhere instead of just being merged nicely one into another. So now this hit is fine. This one is a little bit too early now, so I'm going to separate it, move it to the right, drag out that section a little bit and make a crossfade in front. This one, same thing. I separate it, move it to the right spot, drag out a little bit of material to form a crossfade. You should not do the crossfade right in front, especially if you're pulling out to regions, because in this part of the region, the hit is still there. This is non-destructive editing, so although you make a cut and trim something, the audio data is still there. As soon as you trim out that region again, the hit is going to come back. So if I would make my crossfade here, then we have like a double hit here. This is not what we want, but we want our crossfade to be before the actual hit. Now here, this hi-hat is a little bit too late. And now we are going to make the crossfade where there is basically nothing happening. This hit, separate it, move it to the left, pull out a little bit, make a crossfade, and so on, and so on, and so on. It's much easier to pull back a hit that is a little bit too late instead of pulling out two parts because something is rushing. Just because if you, for example here, this hit is too early. If I move it to the right, we have a gap and we have to somehow fill that gap. And especially if you have like really fast snare rolls, for example, and you need to pull this apart, you have a lot of gaps within short time that you somehow need to fill. So it's much easier to pull together like a loose performance than to pull apart a rushing performance. And what you really need to be careful about is that your crossfade is not going to include the hit that has been too early. So your crossfade needs to be a little bit before, so that you are in the middle of nowhere and not right in the middle of one hit. And then you can move on, do one hit after another, just decide sometimes by feeling if you really want to move something or if you can leave it a little bit groovy, because sometimes it feels tighter if it's not exactly on the hit. That seems counterintuitive, but hey, sometimes the snare hit needs to be a little bit later or a little bit earlier just to feel right. So do your edits and then always check and listen if everything sounds clean and if everything sounds groovy and if you really like the way it's working with all the rest of the instruments. One little special situation that you can encounter when drum editing is if the drummer is playing a cymbal too early. So let's say he's playing a ride together with a snare, but the ride is far too early. This is going to mess up the punch of your snare, and it's just sounding weird. In an optimal scenario, they are played at the exact same time. But reality is not always optimal, so oftentimes you really have like a cymbal that is way before the bass drum. So it's like kshpong, kshpong, instead of bam on one spot. I really like to edit those hits just to keep the punch intact. Here I have a little example. It's not really drastic, but it shows what I mean. This little hi-hat here is coming before the bass drum. So instead of having like a tight bass drum hit, it's being washed up a little bit by the hi-hat coming too early, just eating away of that initial transient. What I here like to do is go in, separate a part of sustain of the hit before, and just move it to the right to cover up this hi-hat that has been too early. And now I make a little crossfade right in front, of course a crossfade here, and then we get instead of. It's just making that hit a little bit tighter. Now with the hi-hat, it's not so drastic, but if you have a right cymbal or if you have like a crash that is way too early, it really messes up the punch. And this is a way to somewhat correct it. Just get rid of that initial hit of the cymbal and push it basically back behind the bass drum. But you always need to cut all the tracks at once. So yes, I am cutting off the attack of that cymbal, but it just sounds better as if it was just too early in front of the actual shell hit. Now let's see how we can do this with Beat Detective. So I open up Beat Detective. I found that Beat Detective works best if you don't let it analyze all the tracks at once. First of all, by aligning all the tracks, so moving them that they happen at the same time. That is really helpful, especially for Beat Detective, because it's not like, am I going to take the direct bass drum microphone or am I going to take the room mic? And then sometimes it's right in the middle. So by aligning everything, this already eliminates one error potential. Then by just letting listen Beat Detective to only, let's say, the bass drum and the snare, this removes another possible error. So it's not detecting too early played cymbals. So how do I do this? I choose now a region here. Let's just take these two bars as an example. I go in, I have everything grouped, I separate everything. I separate these two bars, for example. Then I disable the group and I only select the bass drum in microphone and the snare top microphone. Now I go in Beat Detective and let it capture that selection. I have set the grid to 16th note because there's nothing quicker happening than this. And now I let it analyze and it's going to show us where it thinks that the hits will happen. So this seems to be fine. It's adding little numbers to show where it thinks everything is supposed to be. What you of course need to do is move within the right grid. So if you have like a pattern that's played in triplets, you need to activate the triplet detection here. Or if you have like 16th notes, you should also go into a grid that will recognize 16th notes. Then you can quickly go through and see if the hits are detected correctly. Sometimes Beat Detective or any other program is messing it up, and if the performance is too loose, a hit is really far too early, it just doesn't know, oh, is this the one or is this the 16th before? And sometimes interpretation is just wrong. So you could go in, click on that and just put in the right position. But here everything seems to be fine. So now the bass drum and the snare hits have been detected. Now I re-engage the group, Shift Command G, and then with Shift I select all the other members of the group. So now the detection has been done by only listening to the bass drum and the snare, but we of course want to cut everything at once. So I re-engage the group, select all the tracks based on that detection here. And now I can go in and let Beat Detective separate the clips. So I go to clip separation, I say separate. Let me zoom in a little bit so that we can see this in work. Now clip conform means it's going to move it where we want it to move. I usually go for like 100% strength, but you could also go in like and say, yeah, don't move it exactly on the grid, but leave some human factor in. I think if I already want to do it automatically, I want to do it 100%, and that's fine. So I leave everything at 100%, and then now I say conform, and you see the pieces being moved to the correct place. Now we have these gaps, and nothing is crossfaded yet, but Beat Detective has like edit smoothing. So I go here, edit smoothing, I say smooth, and then it's going to do automatically these crossfades that we have shown manually before. You can say how long you want the crossfades to be. I found that a pretty short crossfade most of the times works really well and is very inaudible. Now, this is the result. Okay, here I think I heard something. And this is why it is worth to go in and check what Beat Detective has done. Here I heard a little click. And if I look at it, I can see that this hit was far too early and the crossfade has not been made early enough. So the crossfade was right on top of the hit that has been moved. So it is still in the left portion of this clip, and the crossfade was right on top. So now we have like the ghost of a little hit right in the middle of our edit. This is not what we want. So what I usually do is I go in and just move the crossfades. I just tab myself through all the hits and make sure that all the crossfades are early enough. Most of the times working like this, aligning everything and just detecting bass drum and snares will work fine. But if you have too early cymbals, sometimes this is exactly what happens, so that you have the crossfade on top of one element that was just not in sync with all the rest. So going in and moving the crossfades, just checking them quickly, is good practice, so that you end up with a really clean edit of your drums. I would not do all the song at once, like 156 bars, and let Beat Detective do everything at once. I usually go in and do like 4 bars or 8 bars. It depends on the complexity of the groove. It's really just like oof da, oof da. I can also do 32 bars at once. But if you have like complex fills, or maybe a changing of pattern between, like, let's say 16th, and then you have like triplet eights or something like this, you need to handle those sections individually. So go in and choose a section where you think that Beat Detective will be able to detect everything correctly, and then do that section at once, and then move on to the next section. I also usually like to go in, and when a part is done, I go in and consolidate it, so that I don't have like a million fades to look at. I just don't like it. I prefer it to be one consolidated audio file and move on. Sometimes it's nice to use tools for a different purpose than they have been made for. Beat Detective has this really nice edit smoothing function, which means that if you have cuts in a track somewhere, let me move some stuff around here a little bit, and I want to add crossfades, I could do this manually. For example, when I'm editing vocals and I need to move certain phrases to the right or to the left and stuff, and instead of doing manual crossfades all the time, I sometimes just pull up Beat Detective and let it smooth it for me. Of course, there is the function that you can just select a region and do a batch fades, but the thing is, it will not close those gaps. It will just then put a fade out at the end of one clip and a fade in at the beginning of the next clip. But if you let Beat Detective do this, let's put here 15 milliseconds, and if I make smooth, it's going to pull out one region and do a crossfade and fill all the gaps, which is really, really nice. So you can also use it for something else than drums. Yeah, so that's basically it with the editing process itself. The next thing that I would do now is move back the tracks where they belong to. So since I wrote down by how much I moved the tracks to align them, I will just move them back and get back to the sound that I had when I was recording those tracks. So the main things you really have to take care of is move everything at once. If you want to do it like me, align all the tracks first before editing. It makes editing just much easier. Take care of those too early cymbals and edit them away. And don't forget to make crossfades everywhere and check it and double check it. And if you do an automatic thing like Beat Detective, go in and check if everything has been done right. Because sometimes a part is moved to a location where it's not supposed to be, so really check it before you commit to your edit. And of course, just keep a double of the unedited track as a layer below, just in case something is messed up and you didn't notice that first, so you can come back in later and just fix something. Oh, by the way, if you want to know how these drums have been recorded, we made a complete series about producing a metal song. I will link up here and down there to this complete playlist so that you can see how we recorded the drums, guitars, bass, vocals, arranged everything, mixed everything. It's really in-depth and showing every aspect of producing a metal song. Thanks for watching so far, and I hope there was something of value for you that was going to help you with your next drum editing. And if you have any requests for future videos or want to leave me a nice little comment, I would really enjoy. Thank you, have a good day, and see you next time. Bye bye.